A few years before the outbreak of the New World War, the USSR had a very difficult time. The Americans and the British were pumping money and resources into Germany at a breakneck pace, hoping to turn the Nazi war machine against the Soviet Union. Trotsky, although he was expelled from the Soviet Union and deprived of Soviet citizenship, did not abandon attempts to regain power in the country. In doing so, he relied on his own supporters in key positions in all the power structures and organizations of the Soviet Union, from the army to the NKVD. The country's leadership, in an attempt to defeat the Trotskyist conspiracy, replaced the head of the NKVD. Heinrich Yagoda was replaced by Nikolai Ivanovich Yezhov.The. The new head of the Punitive Department reported to the country's leadership on the effective purging of Soviet society from enemies, saboteurs, spies, and anti-Soviet elements. The number of cases opened was so great that the courts could not cope with them. Then the so-called troikas were introduced for extrajudicial resolution of cases, which consisted of the head of the regional UNKVD, the secretary of the regional committee of the VKP-B, the prosecutor. Yezhov reported the discovery of a large-scale conspiracy within the country and claimed to be successfully fighting it. At first glance, everything did look bleak. Hundreds of thousands of anti-Sovietists, from class alien strata of the population, thousands of saboteurs, hundreds of spies, of all intelligence agencies of the world. However, it turned out that the Trotskyists in the NKVD arrested not just random, innocent people, but valuable Soviet specialists, rationalizers, technical and military leaders, engineers, and highly skilled workers. When the underside of the NKVD's work was uncovered, it turned out that the majority of cases were trumped up, and all the evidence was based on personal confessions extracted under torture. Moreover, such style of work was not developed spontaneously, but was deliberately encouraged by Yezhov. Nikolai Ivanovich got off the hook, reveling in his own power and permissiveness. The famous Iron Gauntlets turned out not so much to cleanse the country of pests as to weaken it before the deadly confrontation with the gaining power of German Nazism, implicitly supported by the free world. A horrifying truth reached the party and the country leadership. By fighting the Trotskyists, they were allowed to unleash real terror against the entire Soviet people with the hands of a mentally ill man. The short, faithful Leninist turned out to be just a bloody midget. At first Lavrentiy Beria was appointed to be Yezhov's deputy. After he became the de facto head of the NKVD, the Yezhov's terror was practically over. The work of the NKVD was reformed. Yezhov's best investigators ended up in insane asylums, and those who sabotaged consciously received a legal punishment. Some were sentenced to jail, some were shot. The notorious troikas were liquidated. Many criminal cases, which turned out to be completely fabricated, were re-examined. Innocent people were returned from prisons and camps. Their place was taken by the real Trotskyites. The country was recovering and gathering all the strength for the fight against German militarism. Yezhov, though he continued to be nominally listed as the head of the NKVD, was removed from real control. For some real activity he was appointed People's Commissar of Water Transport. Apparently, this dodgeball was done so that all of Yezhov's stooges, who with his connivance occupied most of the key positions in the NKVD, did not get agitated. After their arrest Yezhov was no longer needed. He was fired from all positions and prosecuted. His activities caused enormous harm to the Soviet Union. Extermination of the innocent, literate people on the threshold of the Great War, when every Soviet man counted and there was a chronic shortage of workers, not just a crime, but death with a capital letter. Yezhov's widely illegal activities were not covered in the Soviet press. He simply took a bullet on his merits and was later consigned to oblivion. All references to him as a prominent revolutionary and political figure were removed. Even in 1998, when almost everyone was rehabilitated, even the obvious scoundrels, Yezhov Nikolai Ivanovich was not. The bloody trail of this statesman was too thick.